Let's talk about why no is actually a dirty word. My name is Cecilia. I'm a career coach and I have a background in human resources. My passion is to help you feel amazing at work. Today I want to talk about some advice that is out there that we typically quite agree with, and that is that we need to say no more at work and in life in general. Now, that is fantastic advice. I do agree with it. The problem is that for those of us who might not be amazing boundary setters, when we hear that we actually just need to say no, we think that we have to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to do that. And that is a really hard thing to say, right? The advice is that we don't even need to give an explanation, that we can just say no and give no reason. Now, don't get me wrong, there is some benefit in having a skill to say no firmly to someone who is incredibly pushy or someone who continues to come and make you feel really uncomfortable with requests or demands. And that's important. But that's certainly not where we start. And when someone who isn't amazing at setting boundaries yet hears that that's what they need to be doing, I bet it makes you be too scared to set a boundary. It did for me. And the reality is that for those of us who are good at setting boundaries, we understand that we're not just going to stand up and say no. What we're going to do is decline the request or decline the demand in a way that feels good for us and in a way that feels good for the other person. And that is where we want to always start when we're setting boundaries or we're getting these requests. We want to start in a place that's gentle, firm, honest, and clear. Now, let's move forward and talk about why no is such a bad word to start off with. First of all of us have a certain type of relationship with the word no that is probably not so good. For most of us, it starts off in childhood when we hear no a lot from our parents, and it can bring up feelings of rejection, right? Or feelings of shame. Maybe you're someone who's made what you thought was a very reasonable request, and when you hear a big fat no in your face, you feel a little ashamed that you asked in the first place. And for the person saying no, we understand that. And that's why it becomes so hard just to say no, because we never want someone to feel the way we would feel if someone just said no to us. Also, just saying no blatantly can be quite unprofessional. Again, we're talking about a firm no to someone that is very pushy and has very unreasonable demands. That might be reserved for those odd and rare situations. But from a day-to-day moment, just saying no is going to feel very unprofessional to someone, and it might really harm your relationships with your colleagues. So what can we do instead? How can we decline something that in a way that feels good to us and feels good to the other person? Now, I've created a guide that you can download with a link down below that gives you scripts for declining, 20 different scripts for declining things in a way that feels better for you and for them. But here are a couple of tips from me. One is be gentle and be positive. Focus more on being maybe grateful for having a request come your way, for having someone recognize that you have the skill or they're thinking of you. Be grateful for that first and say that, and then give your saying, unfortunately, I'm not able to do that right now because of this. Thank you so much. You want to give that sandwich effect where you're focusing a little bit more on the positive rather than on the really big negative explanation of why you can't do it. There's a breeziness you can use here that can be really effective and gentle and land really well on someone. Now, I know what you're thinking. What if this is someone who I know doesn't take no or doesn't take declining really well? I would say give them a chance. Let's say that try out some of these scripts and let that escalate and let them show you that they can't handle it. Don't anticipate them not being able to handle that no right away, but experiment and see what the reality is. Don't let that story, that negative story, affect how you communicate with them right away in the beginning. Number 2, when you're declining, maybe you have an opportunity to give something else. So maybe you can't help with a certain project, but maybe you can brainstorm some solutions or an outline that would be helpful for them. Maybe you can even brainstorm other people that might have a skill set to help them. So those are a couple ways I want you to play around with that you can decline requests that are kind, that feel good for you, and that land well on the other person. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and go ahead and download my guide of scripts that will help you decline things in a really graceful, nice way.